Okay, so for the first time in a really long time, the war in Ukraine is at a critical crossroads. And it's not because of some big shift on the battlefield, it's because of a major shift in the politics happening behind the scenes.
And that shift, well, it raises a huge question for everybody. Are we looking at a real turning point towards peace? Or is this whole thing some kind of diplomatic trap with really dangerous consequences? Honestly, the stakes just couldn't be any higher.
Yeah, while the fighting is still going on, behind closed doors, the diplomatic gears are turning faster than they have since this whole thing started. Something fundamental has changed.
So what's actually causing all this? Well, it boils down to a revised peace plan that's being pushed by the United States, reportedly with backing from Donald Trump. So let's break down what's actually in it.
All right, the plan seems to have four main parts. First, a ceasefire that freezes the current battle lines. Second, security guarantees for Ukraine. Third, new limits on any future NATO expansion. And finally, a phased withdrawal plan. The crucial thing to see here is the mix of these proposals. Every single one is a major concession for one side or the other.
And here's the twist that has really gotten everyone's attention. For the first time, Russia has actually signaled that this plan could meet a lot of its demands. They've reacted positively to some parts of it. That's an incredibly rare signal to get from Moscow, and it completely changes the dynamic here.
As you can imagine, a plan this big doesn't just land without making waves. The reaction has been fast, and it's been deeply, deeply divided, especially all across Europe. This chart really shows you that split perfectly. You've got one camp that looks at this and sees a potential path to stability. But then you have another huge group that's afraid this plan does the exact opposite, that it basically rewards aggression by locking in Russia's territorial gains. And then, of course, there's a third group just cautious, undecided, and watching from the sidelines. So, what about Ukraine in all of this? Well, their position is crystal clear. It's a non-negotiable red line for them. They are insisting that any real, lasting security commitments have to come before any talk about giving up territory. For them, security isn't just a bargaining chip. It's the absolute foundation for any kind of peace. And this takes us right into the heart of the whole debate. Is this proposal a genuine breakthrough that could save countless lives, or is it a betrayal of the very principles Ukraine has been fighting and dying for? Let's just look at the two sides here. Supporters argue, look, a ceasefire saves lives, plain and simple, and Europe desperately needs some stability to move forward. But critics fire right back, saying this isn't peace, it's appeasement. It rewards Putin's aggression and would probably mean Ukraine permanently loses its land.
And there's this one specific, long-term fear that keeps coming up among European diplomats. They're worried that a deal made in a rush wouldn't create a real, lasting peace, but instead what's called a frozen conflict. A tense, unresolved standoff that could just reignite, maybe even more violently, a few years down the line.
And that fear really gets to the heart of the Ukrainian position, which is no peace without justice. For them, any deal that just freezes the fighting in place, that fails to address the initial aggression, well, that's not real peace at all.
And it's so important to understand that the shockwaves from this decision would go way beyond Ukraine's borders. This is one of those moments that will define the future of the entire European continent.
So what's really on the line for Europe? It's not just one thing. It's really three pillars of its modern identity. First, the credibility of the entire NATO alliance. Second, the whole architecture of Europe's long-term security is being rewritten as we speak. And third, the very unity of the continent could either be strengthened or completely shattered by this.
To put it simply, the outcome of these negotiations isn't just about ending a war. It's either going to reset the map and alliances of Europe for a generation, or it could fracture its unity in a way we really haven't seen in decades. The effects are going to be profound, and they're going to be long-lasting.
So all of this brings us to right now, to this very uncertain present. The next pages of history are being written as we speak in these quiet meetings between Kyiv, Washington, and Moscow. But the ending to this story, it's far from decided.
And this, right here, is probably the single most important takeaway from all of this today. For the first time, the diplomatic maneuvering is actually outpacing what's happening on the ground. The final shape of this deal is taking form right now, and it's being driven by politics, not by combat.
Which leaves us right back where we started, with the question that is going to define the next few months. Is what we're watching a realistic path to peace, a genuine breakthrough that could finally end the suffering, or is it a dangerous compromise that trades short-term stability for long-term justice and security? The whole world is watching to see what happens next.
Okay, so for the first time in a really long time, the war in Ukraine is at a critical crossroads. And it's not because of some big shift on the battlefield, it's because of a major shift in the politics happening behind the scenes.
And that shift, well, it raises a huge question for everybody. Are we looking at a real turning point towards peace? Or is this whole thing some kind of diplomatic trap with really dangerous consequences? Honestly, the stakes just couldn't be any higher.
Yeah, while the fighting is still going on, behind closed doors, the diplomatic gears are turning faster than they have since this whole thing started. Something fundamental has changed.
So what's actually causing all this? Well, it boils down to a revised peace plan that's being pushed by the United States, reportedly with backing from Donald Trump. So let's break down what's actually in it.
All right, the